Hi, my name is Sharon Jeffess, and I would like to go through this PowerPoint with you. There are some really fabulous Black artists that I want to share, and I think that their art is so fantastic. And sometimes I don't think that people appreciate or know as much about them as they really need to. So we're going to start out. Uh, And this is part one. We're going to talk about two Black artists. Uh, Tanner said, I will preach with my brush. If you're a teacher and you're using this PowerPoint, feel free to stop it, discuss things in places, and really make it your own. Um, there's a wonderful heritage of art in the early American Black community. And one of my very favorite artists is Henry Tanner. We're going to talk about Tanner and Pippin, and they were amazing artists in important times in American history. This picture is called The Banjo Lesson and is one of Tanner's most popular works. In the picture, light comes from two different directions. A young man is being taught by his grandfather. What do you notice in the foreground of the picture? What do you notice? What can you see in the background of the picture? What do you think the mood of this picture is? Henry Tanner was an American artist and the very first African American to gain international artistic acclaim. He moved to Paris, France in 1891 and continued to live there after being accepted in French artistic circles. He was mentored by the great American artist Thomas Eakins and honored by him. When you have a mentor, it means someone sort of takes you under their wing and trains you and shares their experience with you. He said, quote, I was extremely timid and made to feel that I was not wanted, although in a place where I had every right to be, even months afterward, caused me sometimes weeks of pain. Every time any one of these disagreeable incidents came into my mind, my heart sank and I was anew tortured by the thought of what I had endured, almost as much as the incident itself. Tanner was a religious man who did many wonderful biblical pictures. The picture on the right shows a gentleman, and of course, it looks like, again, the grandfather and grandson at a table praying. The next page is a picture of Tanner in Paris. Just like the American artist Mary Cassatt was mentored and went to women artists. She was the very first famous woman artist, and she went and trained under Degas, was mentored by Degas. But we also have Tanner, and this is a picture of him in Paris as well. Tanner did this wonderful lion, and our first project is going to be a lion, and we're going to draw it step by step. And a friend of mine said, "Do you know that when a man doesn't shave his beard or cut his hair and lets everything grow, he sort of has a really cool mane like a lion." And in Israel, from what I understand, the tribe of Judah are the warriors, and they don't cut their hair or their beard. That's just, I don't know. It's just something fun to think about. And anthropomorphism is also a type of personification that gives human characteristics to non-humans or objects, especially animals. And lions have been very important, not only in art, but also in literature. In art, you have the Lion of Lucerne. In literature, you have Aslan, the great lion. And when you start sketching your lion, you can do different ways to make your line. You do your shapes first, and shading, shadow, texture, makes something look real. And as you can see in these pictures, they're all different. But first you sketch it out, and then you add your details to it. This is Daniel in the Lion's Den, also done by Tanner. My effort has been not only to put the biblical incident in the original setting, but at the same time gives a human touch to convey to my public the reference and elevation these subjects impart to me. This particular picture, of course, Daniel and the lion's den. Now, the first project we're going to do, he also did the picture on the bottom left of Jesus walking in the water. And we can do a boat where you take and you make your water a little darker in the foreground and draw your boat. And step by step, you can do a picture of a seascape. And again, you can see the water, the reflection in the water, and we can just do that step by step. And this is project number 2. The picture, the disciples see Christ walking on the water, is a monochromatic color scheme. And if you look at the picture, that means that you just use shades of blue and black and white in the picture. And there are horizontal and vertical lines that show stability. Now, a lot of times diagonal lines show movement, but we have horizontal uh, lines that show stability. In the picture on the right, Tanner shows how a young man is making shoes. And I always love to say drawing and painting is art you look at, sculpture is art you walk around, architecture is art you walk through, fashion is art that you wear. And designing shoes and making shoes, if you think about your very favorite shoes, an artist drew them first and designed them. And it's always fun to practice designing shoes. Again, Tanner shows the warmth between the teacher and the student. Another fun project is that you can actually study what people's shoes look like in history. And I once bought a collection of, it's interesting. Uh, an artist took and made the shoes of these famous people in history. And you can also go to this website and go, and it'll talk about the history of shoes because, again, it's very interesting. And here's the pictures of what George Washington boots might have been like, maybe Martha Washington's shoes. You can turn it into a teacup, which makes that a lot of fun. And on the bottom right, we have a student that drew the picture first. And then, of course, you make it three-dimensional in sculpture. He pictured pioneer life. Tanner was a genre artist. You can look up the term genre artist. He pictured life in America at a certain period of time. Now, another great hero, an American artist, is very important, is Horace Pippin. And Horace Pippin was a well known American folk artist. He served in K Company, 3rd Battalion of the 369th Infantry, the famous Harlem Hellfighters in Europe in World War I. He lost the use of his right arm after being shot by a sniper. Here's what he said of his combat experience: I didn't care what or where I went. I asked God to help me, and He did so. That is the way I came through the terrible and hellish place, where the whole entire battlefield was hell. So it was no place for any human being to be. While in the trenches, Pippin kept an illustrated journal, which gave an account of his military service. It's a wonderful thing to keep a journal and be able to draw and write about your experience. Pippin was considered a naive artist or folk artist. He was an artistic genius with no formal training and a true American hero. He combined wonderful textures and shapes, put colors together in interesting ways. Here's a picture of World War I, which he was a great hero in. On this page, it's depicting a scene informed at the Battle of Fischald, where he was shot. He even made the frame and decorated it with hand-carved uh, war material, including German and French helmets and weapons. He was a true folk artist. Pippin painted several religious subjects, both those illustrating biblical passages and visionary statements, like his holy mountain. He was a religious man and stayed close to church and sang in the choir throughout his life. We can see wonderful views of everyday activities by Pippin that tended to be relatively invisible to the white masses before the Great Migration. So Pippin's domestic view It offered a privileged view, very much of a privileged view. Now, a wonderful folk art project to do with Horace Pippin is to do paint on a record. And here's a picture of these old phonograph records. You could go into thrift stores. Oh my word! I remember seeing a whole bunch of them thrown into the trash, and it was all they could do, not to try to go into the dumpster and take them out because they're wonderful, and they can be turned into art. And you just sand it and paint it with acrylic paint. And on the one on the left is a jazz musician. You can have it go with the songs. You can even have a very personalized record. I've had students put cityscapes on the records and just different things. But when you take an object that is used every day and turn it into a work of art, that's really folk art, doing folk art. And the same thing, quilting is also a folk art. And before 1830, both awareness and money for the abolitionist cause was raised. Quilts were one of many craft pieces sold by the abolitionists who were working hard to end slavery. One way they did this was to hold grand fairs. Women sometimes put anti slavery poems and sang on the quilts they made for the fairs for their friends and family. The goal was to show the terrible plight of the slaves. A fun project is to get wallpaper scraps and create a quilt design. Patterns, oh, you can talk about patterns. Pattern is repeated design. Horace Pippin gave us wonderful images of everyday life of African American families, and he also is a great hero. We're going to have another several PowerPoints like this of famous African American artists that were great heroes in American history and pictured America at different periods of time. I thank you so much, and I can send you this in a PDF format if you're interested. And stay tuned for the next one. And again, if you like this, make it your very own. There's so many different things you can do and be creative with this. This is just two. I have several more artists that are just fabulous and that students should really know about. Thank you very much. This is Sharon Jeffus with visualmanna.com. I also have a series of wonderful PowerPoints for teachers that they can use to teach with things like animal eyes, interesting topics for children and that are catalysts for interesting subjects and lessons for art. So thank you very much.